Welcome to the First Things First podcast. And first things first, we need you to subscribe and leave comments, letting us know what you think of the show. We're listening. I'm Nick Wright, joined by two of my favorite people, Jenna Wolf, Chris Carter. Now, let's get the show started.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf. Fresh off the flight from Minneapolis, that is the Hall of Famer Chris Carter. That is Nick Wright. We are all a little sleepless and blurry-eyed, but couldn't be happier about it because what a game we got to watch last night.
Amazing week in Minneapolis.
Good to have you back, man.
Yeah, absolutely. But a great week there. The city put on a tremendous event, given very, very harsh conditions as far as the weather, and the game lived up to what we want with the Super Bowl.
There are little kids across the country right now that cannot believe it if we were to tell them Super Bowls used to be blowouts.
Yeah.
I mean, all we get is great games now, and last night was another one of them.
Yep, and Patriots fans are eating a little crow this morning, but let's take a look how and why the underdog masks are officially retired. That'll happen after you pull off an upset, and there are no more games left in the season. Super Bowl 52 turned out to be just an incredible game. 74 points, over 1,100 yards, only one punt. And when all was said and done, the Eagles bested the mighty Patriots behind an incredibly coached game by Doug Peterson. Nick Foles led the way, throwing for 373 yards, 3 touchdowns, even catching his own touchdown pass. Let's start with him. Here is Nick Foles after the game.
We have such a great group of guys, such a great coaching staff. We felt confident coming in, and we just went out there and played football. We've played this game since we were a little kid. We've dreamed about this moment. There's plenty of kids watching this game right now dreaming about this moment. Someday we'll be here. And to be here with my daughter, my wife, my family, my teammates, this city, we're very blessed.
Get to this point, a lot of people, counted us out, but that locker room believed in each other, believed in me, and I got a great staff and great players, and we found a way to get it done.
Proud of the way our players, coaches, everybody competed for 60 minutes. Just wasn't quite enough. We weren't able to perform at our best.
You can't win the game if you're not in the game, and you play to win, and sometimes you lose. And I'm disappointed. Wish we could have done a better job, but we fought to the end, and I give the Eagles a lot of credit. They played a great game. They got a great team, and those guys played really well.
You can understand his frustration. It never really felt like the Patriots were in full control at any point during the game, save for a couple of minutes. But, Cece, you and I spent time in Philadelphia. We know these fans. This is the most amazing thing that's pretty much ever happened to them at this point. They are still partying strong, I'm sure, in Philly. How were they able to pull off the upset last night?
Well, we thought two of the biggest differences in these teams was the defensive front with their 7-man rotation, but New England's offensive line, their game plan negated them. The other unit that we thought had a decisive advantage against New England was the offensive line. And you got to give credit to the head coach because his ability to continue to be aggressive. And I think there's some benefit to having a backup or someone that you didn't have a lot of tape on running this offense. Yeah, Nick Foles has been a starter. He's played a lot of games. But this New England team, they had only had 5 games of tape. So for me, I think that there have been a couple other quarterbacks, Hostetler, Doug Williams, that have gone on as backups to win Super Bowls. But I believe there was an advantage. And there's also an advantage that his coach allowed this team to play aggressive. They did it a lot like New England, too. They started off one way. They started off feeding Alshon Jeffries, and then they switched it around. They had 5 receivers with 3 or more catches. So even after Alshon started it, he didn't get hot again. Then they started moving around Aguilar, the running game. So they were able to move. When you can get 10 first down on third down conversions, twice as many as New England. When you punt one time, when you get 9 minutes more on time of possession, your chances of beating New England are going to be very, very high. I like the fact last week we never talked about the Eagles. They have to play a perfect game. They have to create all these turnovers. No, we thought the Eagles had a better roster.
Right.
And they played with confidence from the beginning. They took control of the game. New England finally had a lead later in the game, but their ability to come out and have that 7-minute drive to start the game and 7 minutes after they lost the lead late in the game, those things right there were two huge stories. And those two drives right there, I believe, won them the game.
That's the ball game. New England down the entire way, clawing back, finally takes the lead with a lot of time left, over 9 minutes left, when they take that lead in the fourth quarter, 33-32. And what does Philadelphia do? 14 plays, 75 yards, with 2 third-down conversions and a fourth-down conversion mixed in. By the way, who got the 2 third-down conversions, the touchdown, and the fourth-down conversion? I think the most talented player on their offense, Zach Ertz. They went to a guy who had helped get them there on their biggest plays of the season. Cece, you mentioned that they were 10 of 16 on third downs. But they were also 2 of 2 on fourth downs. So they were, in essence, 12 out of the 16 times New England could have gotten them off the field.
Yes, great point.
New England failed to do it. That was the
same thing how Atlanta lost last year's Super Bowl.
Yes.
They could not get off the field on third down. New England took advantage of it, and we saw the Eagles do the same thing.
It was because people also have to understand the context of that drive. 14 plays, 75 yards to retake the lead. I know the strip sack ended up being the thing that didn't quite ice it, but came close to it. But on that drive, New England had the ball going into that drive for Philadelphia 3 times in the second half. Here's what they did. 8 plays, 75 yards, touchdown. 7 plays, 75 yards, touchdown. 10 plays, 75 yards, touchdown. New England was methodically kicking their butts down the field in the second half, and Philadelphia answered.
Right. It was important that they had a drive to get some points, but it was more important that they let the defense rest.
Yeah.
And it was more important that they were able to send the message as far as their overall aggressiveness that we're not going to just let you guys come back, because it looked like a typical New England comeback win.
Right. And with this kind of game, success begets confidence. And Doug Peterson went into this game thinking, hey, we're not going to lose, but if we do, we're certainly not going to lose by not being aggressive. Like, we're going all out. We're going to throw everything we have at him. And that showed with Nick Foles. It gave him confidence right off the bat to be aggressive, to march down the field, and that led to his confidence the rest of the game.
And I know we're going to talk about Foles extensively in a bit, but on Doug Peterson, the play, not only going for it on 4th and 1,
but the way they did.
But the play he did far too often. I feel like coaches don't do what they really want to do out of fear of criticism. Like, I'd like to go for it here, but no one's going to criticize me if I take the points. Doug Peterson doubled down on leaning into the criticism. Oh, I'm going to go for it on 4th and goal, but I'm also going to call the trickiest of all trick plays, a reverse pass back to my quarterback. That is, to me, surpassed Sean Payton for the onside kick, for gutsiest call in a Super Bowl that I've ever seen. He was extraordinary, was Doug Peterson, in his continual aggressiveness throughout the game.
Yeah, and also the coach knows his personnel. Trey Burton came to the University of Florida as a quarterback. All right, so he has the overall experience. They moved Trey to tight end at the University of Florida after being a high school quarterback. He also played some quarterback and threw some passes in college. So you're trying to utilize your whole roster. Doug Peterson's able to do that. He puts in a play at the perfect time. I don't think coaches worry about the criticism. I think coaches try to play their percentages, and they try to go for a safer play. Most coaches think alike. The thing that's different with Doug Peterson and Frank Wright, the offensive coordinator, is they are going about it a little bit different. And I think that with Doug, that's kind of his calling card. The same way Ron Rivera. That's the way he kind of, besides defense, he was Riverboat Ron. And that's what, people started realizing how aggressive. Belichick has been aggressive for a long, long time.
And the flip side, by the way, the coach on the other side, the greatest coach ever, all respect to Bill Belichick, he's been known for his defense. This is the worst defensive game the Patriots have ever played in the playoffs. The most points they've ever given up, the most yards they've ever given up. Belichick, some of the small things he usually does brilliantly. At the end of the clock, at the end of the first half, didn't use his timeouts properly. Belichick got out-coached by a young head coach in Doug Peterson.
And Belichick, I don't know the reason why Malcom Butler was not on the field, but for one play. But for a guy in the 2017 season who played more snaps. He played 97% of all New England Patriots snaps. And you didn't have a defensive package that he was a healthy, so he was basically a healthy scratch that he didn't play in. Belichick helped the Eagles by not having Malcom Butler on that football field, because there's some X's and O's situation that New England, because Philadelphia is a predominantly three-receiver offense, Malcom Butler and how they play defense would have been perfect against that Eagles offense.
Were you more surprised that the Eagles won or the way they went about doing it?
The way they won.
Okay.
The way they won. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I mean, just I picked the Patriots. I thought the Eagles could win. I didn't think that the Eagles have no shot. I thought the Eagles could win. If you'd have told me Tom Brady going to throw for 500
yards.
The Pats are going to go 58 minutes without a turnover. They're not going to punt the whole game. No way. This was, to me, shocking. The way Jacksonville beating the Steelers surprised me. The way they beat them was shocking. The way Philly won this game, to me, CC, was shocking.
I don't think shocking. If you'd say Nick Foles is going to have a quarterback rating of 100, I would have said the Eagles were going to win the game, because they have a better roster. The Eagles have a great football team that just happened to have their backup quarterback playing the last 6 games. Coming back at you.
First receiving touchdown by a quarterback in Super Bowl history.
Oh.
2 words to describe last night's game: Nick Foles. 2 years ago, he was considering walking away from the game. Last night, he outduels Tom Brady, combining for 4 touchdowns and throwing for 373 yards with only 1 turnover to win the Super Bowl Most Valuable Player. Foles spoke about his journey from Milan to Minsk after the game.
A couple years ago, there was a time where I was thinking about hanging up the cleats. And, I think as people, we deal with struggles. And that was, a moment in my life where, I thought about it and, I prayed about it. And, I'm grateful that I made the decision to come back here and play.
A lot of people, a lot like this football team, a lot of people counted him out and didn't think he could get it done. And, I believed in him. The staff believed in him. The players believed in him. We just needed time. We needed time together to work out some things. And this whole postseason, Nick has shown exactly who he is and what he can do and what he's capable of doing. He's well deserved of the honor, but I know that he would give credit where credit's due, and he had a lot of playmakers tonight make plays for him on both sides of the ball.
You love a good story to come out of the Super Bowl. You love a great game, but on top of a great game, a good story with a great game really makes for an incredible night. Nick, how remarkable was Foles' run from backup quarterback then to Super Bowl MVP?
It was, for me, as remarkable of a thing as I've seen in recent sports history. Now, I'm a little biased because when they say people were counting us out, they could have been talking about me directly. The moment we found out Carson Wentz was done for the year, I wrote off this season. Yeah. The moment the playoff bracket was locked in, I said there are 5 teams that can go to the Super Bowl out of the NFC. The one who can't, your number 1 seed Eagles. Why? Because Nick Foles is their quarterback. Period, point blank. I didn't care that they had home field. I didn't care about how good their offensive and defensive lines were.
But to your credit, he never really gave you reason to really believe in him, except for a sliver in his career.
But then, he has one of the best NFC championship games we've ever seen. We got to see it in person. And then one of the best, all things considered, Super Bowls we've seen. And by the way, keep in mind that 1 turnover. Man, his receiver had that ball in his hand. The 1 interception and then popped it up in the air. It's not like that was
a very fluke play.
Right. It's not like that was a bad pass. But, CeCe, you tweeted something right after the game that got me thinking. You tweeted about Frank Reich, his offensive coordinator. Football fans know Frank Reich. It's for one reason.
Yes.
He was the backup for Buffalo when they had the 31-point comeback against the Houston Oilers.
Warren Moon.
So Frank Reich he's offensive coordinator. He was a backup quarterback. Doug Peterson, his head coach, his play caller, is a backup quarterback. And man, Chris, it felt to me like they called plays and ran the team for their backup the way they had wished their coaches would call for them when they were in there. Not, we're going to try not to lose the game, but you know what? We're going to play our full playbook, everything, just like Carson Wentz was out there.
And, Nick, one reason why you react the way you did when the backup went in, because the way coaches coach the backup.
Yeah.
I mean, they scare us to death. When we see backups in there, they go to, and they tell us all week, well, what percentage of the playbook? Oh, we got 100% of the playbook in. Then we watch a game that's foreign to us. Right. And like, man, they're very, very conservative.
Now they scale it down.
Why? But Doug talked about it. I needed some time to figure out what this guy can do. And the combination between Doug Peterson and Frank Wright, given Nick Foles the confidence that we've only seen with him in maybe 2013, it's amazing to me. Very aggressive in the play calling. And the last 2 weeks, because that's the only time that they trusted Nick Foles, or at least that they trusted their game plan. With Nick Foles, they were going to throw the ball deep. And their ability to convert on third down, just look what they've done the last 2 weeks. How many points they score against the Vikings?
What was it, 41? 38. 38-7 they won, correct?
How many they scored last night?
41 last night.
Now, if you're talking about combined, especially since week number 7, this New England defense won the top in the NFL, and the Vikings won the top 3 defenses the last 3 seasons.
79 combined.
What Nick Foles was able to do because the confidence of Peterson, man, we're going to go after him. Not only on third down, we're not going to try to run the ball on third, we're going to throw the ball. And also on fourth down, because you don't decide to go for fourth downs on game day. You start letting guys know during the week, hey, this week we're going to be aggressive. If we get on the other side of the 50, look for us to try a couple trick plays. Look for us to try to push it down the field. Look for us to try to maybe go for it on fourth down. And it breeds confidence to a young team and a quarterback who knows he's a backup. He knew that a couple years ago he questioned his ability to play pro football at a high level. But you point out something, Nick. Man, as a wide receiver, I coach wide receivers like I would want to be coached. I try to put in the play designs that wide receivers like, a lot of variety and a lot of make them think that they're more important.
Sure.
Them getting Nick to this frame of mind, I think, is the most important thing to Philadelphia's championship run, besides Howie Roseman equipping them with an unbelievable football team.
It also lets the quarterback know, hey, we're not scaling anything back for you. Like, we don't think less of you just because Carson Wentz is out. If we're going to win, we're going to win with you in there as the leader, at the helm. Go out and win a game for us.
And guess what that we now know? Had they gone with the approach, once Foles is in there, we're going to try to make sure our quarterback doesn't lose us the game.
Lose.
We're going to rely on the defense. Guess what? They still probably beat Atlanta. And guess what? They still probably beat Minnesota. They held Minnesota 7 points.
Right.
They didn't need great. But in this game yesterday, if the idea was, listen, we're just going to do what's gotten us here with Foles. We're going to scale it back. We're going to do all these things. Trust our defense. Man, that defense had no answer for Tom Brady yesterday.
Right.
They needed every last point.
And that's the biggest difference between this story, Nick Foles, and the other 2 that we've seen in Super Bowl history. One being Doug Williams, 1987 with the Washington Redskins, and one being the Giants in 1990 with Hostetler. The one things that are similar, Parcells and Gibbs had a lot of confidence in their backup quarterbacks. So they played very, very aggressive. But it's easy to have confidence in your quarterback when your defense, Giants and Redskins, played lights out.
Right.
In this case, their defense has been supporting the team. Their defense didn't play lights out. That's why this is a unique story, Nick, and that's why people should just be enamored with Nick Foles in doing this on the Super Bowl stage.
How much money do you think Nick Foles made himself yesterday?
Well, man, it's interesting. He signed a 2-year, $12 million contract this offseason. He is wishing he signed a 1-year, $6 million contract. Go ahead and be a free agent, Nick. He made money or made a new team.
Jenna, that's not the right question.
What's the right question?
The right question is, Chris, how much money you make off Nick?
Okay, well, I know that. I know that answer.
Come up.
All right, let's get back to the game now. Brandon Cooks left in the second quarter with a concussion. I mean, he got wally-whopped. CC, how much of an impact do you think this had on the actual game itself?
It had a huge impact. I mean, he is their legitimate deep threat. And given the way Tom Brady took advantage of the secondary, I mean, he was going to have a monster day. I believe he was going to have the best day of his career in his first year with the Saints. The Saints, I mean, with the Patriots.
From the
Patriots traded for him for a day like today. Yeah. You need that 4-3 speed. Now, Amendola, Hogan, Gronk, New England worked that vanilla offense real tight. But they needed Cooks in there because at the end, his speed is missed. Yeah.
Listen, it is hard to say.
Very gentle.
In the moment it happened, I thought it was a huge injury. It's hard to say the Pats missed him a ton because Brady did throw for 500 yards, but maybe some of those 8-play, 75-yard drives could have been a little quicker, which is helpful when you're trailing. Obviously, you'd want your best, your best true wide receiver out there. You would have liked it. The Patriots may do because they're the Patriots, but man, and that was a brutal hit. It's a hell of a hit.
And then here, one of the most important defensive plays of the game, Brandon Graham managed to strip Tom Brady. Eagles recover, allowing them to extend their lead from 5 to 8 while taking another minute off the clock. CeCe, let's talk about this one. How big of a play was this?
This was a huge play, not only just because of the results, but let's just talk from a scheme standpoint. Brandon Graham, is a outside rusher. All right? Philadelphia was not getting a pass rush. What they decided to do was took a page from the New York Football Giants playbook when Justin Tuck and they had the NASCAR package, and they moved some of the defensive ends inside, so they have 4 fast guys on the field. So they moved Brandon Graham inside the defensive tackle, so he would have an advantage against Mason, the right guard, who I believe is one of the weaker players for New England on their offensive line. And his speed and power on the edge of a guard compared to being outside on the tackle, that was the difference in this ball game. And this turnover right here was able to give Philadelphia that extra and give them the field goal at the end. Now, Tom Brady still put some fear in the Eagles, but Brandon Graham, when they couldn't get pressure from their normal rush, they move a defensive end into defensive tackle who makes the play of the Super Bowl.
Man, that was their 1 sack the entire game.
Yes.
That was it. That was it. What we thought that was going to be a huge part of the game. Eagles D-line, it got some pressures, but that was their 1 sack. I want to remember what you were feeling in the moment. The Eagles had just failed on the 2-point conversion. So they're up 5. The Patriots have a timeout. They have the 2-minute warning. There's 2:20 left. I looked online because I'm known to place a wager or two. In that moment, the live odds, meaning you can bet the game as it's going on, it was a pick 'em. Patriots down 5, 2.5 minutes left. And Vegas said, man, it's a coin flip game right now. And I feel like watching the game, everyone, at least on my social media timeline, thought, oh, well, we know how this game's going to end. The exact way, by the way, you said it was going to end, which was the Patriots driving at the end of the game to win by a point.
But this is the thing. Chris Long was outside. I thought Chris Long was going to be the guy that deflects a pass, have a strip, fumble at the end, but Brandon Graham was next to him.
Man.
You know, so putting the pressure on the edge, it came from the defensive tackle spot.
I just want to say one thing about Brady real quick. Brady's the greatest quarterback I've ever seen, maybe the greatest football player ever. We spent the last 2 weeks with, you know what I mean, basically paying homage to him. And that's a bad play by Tom Brady. It was Super Bowl on the line. That wasn't blindside. That was the guy came through the right guard, right where Brady is. It's it's a type of play where if you can take a sack there, the 2-minute warning's coming. Like, all you can't do is that.
Right.
And Brady knew that it was bad. That's why he tried to fake the open hand. He thought they was going to give him the Oakland call. You know, so that right there, he knew that he was in trouble. Brandon Graham pulled off the play, man, that changed the Philadelphia Eagles and their fans' destination to be able to get them their first Super Bowl in franchise history.
Nick, you just said earlier, you know, all the fans knew how this one was going to end. I mean, they were just kind of watching. You know what's going to. Is there any possibility that the Patriots felt the same way? That they were like, look, this is how this is. We always do this. We're going to be fine. No sense of urgency. And then.
I mean, I think they had a sense of urgency, and I don't think they were like taking it easy early on or anything. But I'm sure they went into that drive more confident than any team's ever gone into a drive with 2 minutes left down 5 points in the Super Bowl.
But could that have worked to their detriment?
There's only one time that I saw New England that they thought they were going to lose. And then we still had to pause for that. That's when Gronk was trying to go for the Hail Mary, and the ball was in the air, and all of us who have seen these games were like, is there a flag on the play?
Right, looking for, hoping.
Okay?
Yeah.
So after there wasn't a flag on the play, that was the one time the New England Patriots knew that they were going to lose, when there was no time on the clock. There was no one in that organization. They don't have too much confidence, but they have the confidence to know they respect the game. They think they're going to make a play at the end, one of them, to win the way they always do.
And they were probably, just very quickly, they were probably, all things considered, glad the Ertz play was called a touchdown. They would have preferred it be incomplete, but if he would have been down at the half-yard line,
yes,
they were only down 1 at the time, was Philadelphia. They could take all the time. They were like, oh, okay, Brady down less than a score, 2.5 minutes left, the timeout.
Plenty of time.
We got this.
Right.
And then, man, what a great play by Brandon Graham. Led the Eagles in sacks this year.
If before the game you called Vegas and you bet that Tom Brady would throw over 500 yards and lose the Super Bowl to Nick Foles, you'd be a very rich woman this morning. You'd also be a rich woman this morning. However, the Patriots surrendered 538.
You would have to be a witch to make that bet, so it was actually very apropos.
You know, when I wrote it at 3 this morning, it made sense, and it worked. Patriots surrendered 538 yards of offense, the most ever under Bill Belichick in the playoffs. And now that it's been 8 minutes since the game ended, we turn to the future. Tom Brady said he'll be back. Bill Belichick was unsurprisingly vague. And Gronk said he would consider his options in the offseason. So, CeCe, what do you think the Patriots look like next season? And we can just sort of talk about this from above, because I'm sure we'll get into it over the course of the next couple of days and weeks.
Okay, I know the Crafts aren't going to sell the team. I don't know that Belichick's not going to return. I don't see great people that walk away from what they do really, really well. I'm sure Belichick has a contract for next season, so I expect him to be there. Tom Brady, just flat out, he's going to play until he's 44 or 45. Next year, he turns, 41?
Turns 41.
He's going to be there. So those are the most important things. I think Gronk has a real issue. I think he's battled it the last 3 years. How long do I want to play this game? How long can I sacrifice my body? How long can I be fully committed to playing professional football? I believe that's a real issue with him. Have no clue what he's going to do. But New England, they'll still be all right with Gronk because I've seen him play. I saw him play the second half of last week's game without Gronk. I saw him play last year without Gronk. So I know as long as Tom is there, he will be and he will have offensive weapons around him. But the thing about New England, that let's not forget, we went into this season with them being the biggest favorite that we have seen in the NFL in a long time. All the moves they made this offseason, we thought that this team was, ready for right now. Man, their defense got to get fixed. Man, they got to change some things on that defense. Like, you just cannot give up that many big plays. During the regular season, they gave up 60 pass plays of more than 20 yards. Like, that is not Belichick coach defense. We know they're losing Patricia. We're nearly losing Josh. So they're going to look different. I don't think Bill can replace the type of guys that he has now in Matt and Josh, because there is a trickle-down effect when you lose skilled guys who have been with you as long as they have. And I believe it will affect them. I believe it will affect them a small amount. But look at all their Super Bowl wins. They've been by a small amount. All the Super Bowl losses have been by a small amount. So small amounts can be large when we're talking about the New England Patriots.
All right, so as far as just to copy or to jump off from what you said about the defense as a whole, the best pass rusher they had was James Harrison. I mean, that can't happen. Your best pass rusher can't be a 39-year-old you picked up off of waivers after Thanksgiving.
I think he played less than 40 snaps before he got to them.
Right. I mean, a guy that couldn't make the rotation for the team he'd been with for almost the entirety of his career. He instantly came out there and was the only guy for the Patriots it felt like was getting a consistent rush. But as far as to answer the question, all right, so I would say we are 100% Tom Brady is back next year. Belichick, I think, is more than 90%. But less than 100. The thing that's interesting to me about Belichick, and maybe I'm reading way too much into this, we know definitively Matt Patricia is leaving to go coach the Detroit Lions. Josh McDaniels, by all reports, has a job as well. Won't talk about it. Did a second interview. The reason I bring it up is, does Josh McDaniels think there's a slight chance that Belichick could be moving on somewhere, and that's why he doesn't want to officially take his next job, because his next job could be right there? And then there's the one Gronk. Man, I feel like Gronk is maybe a little better than 50-50. I don't think Gronk knows. I don't think he was lying after the game. Now, it was interesting, the exact quote he gave. He was asked about his future, and he said, I don't know how you heard that. The way he was saying it, like, man, somebody that I've talked to about my future is talking. That was the context of it. It wasn't like, man, where's that coming from? It was like, wait, how did you hear that? And what you got to keep in mind about Gronk is not only the injuries, but because of Gronk's celebrity, he's one of the few non-quarterbacks in this league
that could have a second career very easily.
And a lucrative one.
Yeah.
Maybe not the $8 million a year you can make playing football, but Gronk probably could cobble together a 7-figure income in the offs, you know what I mean, if he moved on from football. Not a lot of guys can do that. And Gronk, the concussion, you see him, he plays with that body armor. Like, his body, he's beat up and he plays a super physical style.
How much you make?
What? Next year, he's going to make about $8 million.
Okay. All right. Y'all just let me know. I mean, y'all make all these suggestions about people quitting. Like, how many people? Like, I just don't see it happen. I believe Gronk is realer. I believe there's zero chance Belichick goes somewhere else, especially to coach. So we think he's going to retire? Like, no.
Maybe
he's
run
not.
A team. I think it's. Can I say something about Gronk real quick? Because we're mostly agreeing on Belichick.
Yes.
You know someone who walked away from nearly $8 million?
Who?
You.
Well, I played 15 years at a time. I had 8 straight Pro Bowls. Like,
I get it.
I had another job offer, too.
Well, I think Gronk would have another job offer. Maybe not the same. I don't think they're bringing him on inside the NFL like they did you, but I think there's something. And
no, because I don't think Gronk knows what's going on inside the Gronk.
and for that reason alone, he could definitely step away.
Go ahead, please. No.
No, that was it. I think we agree that Belichick's not going anywhere because realistically, where else would he go to coach? And we don't think he's going to retire.
Brady
anytime
can't,
soon.
man. Brady's
locked
one of
in.
his propaganda moment.
Brady's already one season into
One thing with Gronk, it could be a little ploy to try to get a little more money, all right, to get an extension with the signing bonus, which is guaranteed. You know, so he's saying, I'm risking a lot. Maybe if y'all come give me a little bit of love, maybe I'll question, do I want to do this? And then they'll acquiesce.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think that might have a little more to do with it, too. I think Gronk, though, might be looking at some pro wrestling. All right? I believe that he's a guy that potentially could, and that's not the first time I've heard that.
Okay. There you go. Pro wrestling, Gronk. We're going to have David Deal on tomorrow to give us all the inside scoop on it.
All right, wait, quick, in 10 seconds, do you think because they lost we're having this conversation? If they won, would we, would all three of them?
You guys would have been worse. Oh, Belichick, everybody's leaving.
Everyone, okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure. That
and the Gronk stuff we had been hearing, we mentioned it.
Yeah,
I mentioned last week that this could be Gronk's last game as a Patriot. Like, that was something that was on the board. Win or lose.
Right.
I don't know if it will be, but it's on the board.
Let's talk about it. Of all the things Doug Peterson could be accused of, coaching soft is not one of them. He started aggressive. He continued aggressively. He finished aggressively. Already up 3 points in the first half, the Eagles elected to go for it on 4th and 1, running a trick play they called a Philly special with former high school quarterback Trey Burton. Burton found Nick Foles in the end zone, made it look easy. The touchdown gave the Eagles a 10-point lead and gave Foles all the confidence in the world. Foles spoke about the play after the game.
Doug and I were talking. I was like, let's just run it. It was a good time. And the end was a little wider than I thought. So I was like, I really need to sell like I'm not doing anything. And it worked. Trey made an amazing throw right on the money. I just looked it in. And, yeah, I mean, we've repped it for a while, so I was excited to get it run and in the Super Bowl.
Now, that play we've been working on for the last couple of weeks and just needed the right time, right opportunity, and guys executed it brilliantly.
How interesting that both teams called a play for the quarterback to catch a ball. Yeah. Only one of them did, and it ended up working out. How key was that play for the Eagles?
It was huge. It was huge. And I like the play call. When you talk to Doug Peterson, he said, I am going to be aggressive. I'm not kicking field goals. I'm going for touchdowns.
But he actually meant it.
And he meant it.
Yep.
I was talking to Alex Smith. A lot of guys in town talking to Alex Smith the night before. And no, actually it was Friday night. No, it was the night before.
All good.
And he was talking about not being aggressive. The only team, Kansas City, who this year beat both of these teams in the Super Bowl.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And he talked about how important as a quarterback it is to stay aggressive the entire game, the entire season. Doug Peterson did it, and his team responded. When you go for a play like that before the half, it's like a heavyweight match in a boxing ring where it's like you are going against the heavyweight champion of the world, and you're giving him everything you have. Buster Douglas, Mike Tyson. Right. I'm swinging with everything I have because I have nothing to lose. You have absolutely nothing to lose. So to go for that, to get it done, sends a message not only to your locker room, but to the New England Patriots locker room going in at the half. Like, we saw what you guys did to everybody else. We saw what happened a couple weeks ago in New England. This is not us.
Right.
You better come out with your A game because we're coming out swinging on you.
Yeah, there's a few things as far as from an X and O standpoint. If you make a critical call like that, you need some help. Right? You need some help. What do I mean by that? You need the defense to be in the right call. If the the Patriots had been in a zone coverage, but they knew on fourth down, they liked the pressure, especially inside the red zone and especially inside the 5-yard line. You know the last time New England was in a situation like this? Malcom Butler intercepted that ball.
Oh, yeah.
All right? So you know that they're going to be in 0 or 1 coverage. So you know that no one's going to guard the quarterback. So not only the timing, execution, listen to the quarterback. Even when I went in motion, the defensive end or outside linebacker was wider than even I thought. Now, as a quarterback, anytime you hand the ball off, either RPO or anything else, you have to either play dead. If not, you're an active player, and they will hit you. So you have to be a great actor. So Nick Foles, man, his ability to be able to act, to lull the guy to sleep, the coverage on the backside, the overall execution. Trey Burton didn't give it away. An old quarterback, he didn't take off his right-hand glove. He still threw the football with his glove on, so there was no indicator that he might do it. The one thing that I saw in this game, not only the aggressiveness of Doug Peterson, but he utilized his roster top to bottom more than Bill Belichick. Something Belichick does with Corey Clement. Big-time role in this game. Trey Burton making that play right there. Big-time plays by guys on his roster that we did not even mention in the 2 weeks of preparation.
Listen, that was, to answer the question, how key was this? Well, it was one of, after the Brandon Graham strip sack, maybe the single biggest individual play of the game. How gutsy was it? It, to me, might be the gutsiest play I've ever seen in a Super Bowl. Sean Payton's surprise onside kick to start the half was, to me, the top of that list.
Whoa.
This is because it was twofold. It was, one was just going for it on fourth down. You keep in mind the situation. They were leading. They had led the whole half. They were, in that moment, it was 15-12 Philly. They could have, with less than a minute left in the half, they could have said, you know what, we didn't get the touchdown.
And as you say, nobody would have criticized him for it.
No. I mean, we didn't get the touchdown. And Peterson already knew he was open to criticism because he had gone for too early. CC would call that chasing points. Once you go for that too early, if you then leave 1 point on the board there, you then don't get this, right? All of a sudden, you've left 4 points on the board against New England. People are like, man, you should be up by a touchdown right now. Instead, you're up by 3. But instead, they went into the half up 10. It was, and what compounded how good it was by them is the Patriots, on the play that got the Eagles down in the red zone to get first and goal from the 8, Belichick didn't use one of his timeouts to give the Patriots even added time at the end of the half. So Belichick did something poorly he normally does great, which is the clock. And then Peterson stayed true to form. I'm going to keep the pedal down at all times.
I think what was so brilliant about this is typically we see Coach Belichick playing the game in advance, meaning I'm thinking about the next thing, the next move, the next half, the next situation. Peterson had to be thinking, the Pats get the ball in the second half.
Yep.
My defense isn't playing stout. They typically come out in the third quarter with the possession and they put the ball in the end zone.
Yes.
He understood that. So he knew a field goal is not enough. I need to make sure that we get this ball in the paint, get 6 points, hope that the extra point is made because we had some issues, and keep the pressure on the New England Patriots. So this was all coaching. I mean, you have to have things go right, but when you are able to make a call like this and your team responds, it lets you know, not only as a head coach, that my players can handle this, but that they want this. And that they're excited for this opportunity, and they did it.
Yes, and it was followed up later on, before the half, by a stop. You know, so trick plays are nice. But if the defense don't get the stop before halftime,
yes,
and if they don't get the stop at the end of the game, you still don't win the game. So it was an amazing call, but if the rest of the team doesn't come through with it, we're not reviewing this play. This is not a great call in the Super Bowl. It's just another play that we will soon forget. But they followed it up with other plays that made this even a bigger play.
And this is where you know me. When it comes to coaches, I'm big on expected points added, clock management, stuff like this. One of the reasons I was so glad to see, just from an analytical standpoint, Doug Peterson go for it on fourth down. Now, I didn't know he was going to do a reverse wide receiver pass, but to go for it is you have to know there. If we go for it and don't get it, New England's backed up on the 1 with less than a minute remaining. They're not getting points before the half in that spot. But if we kick the field goal, and then all of a sudden we get 3, but then we kick off and give New England a chance to get 3 as well, like that's almost just as bad as getting 0 points to begin with. So you had so much to gain from going for it there, and the play call was unreal.
And you can't miss out that they're going to have 2 possessions. They're going to get possession after that one, and they're getting possession after a very, very long halftime.
Greg Jennings, I try.
Stay on y'all's corner.
I try.
All right, in the suburbs.
If 2017 felt like the year of the catch rule in the NFL, it's because 2017 was the year of the catch rule in the NFL. In a season defined by close plays being ruled not a catch, 2 close calls were both ruled touchdowns last night. One with Corey Clement maintaining control in the back of the end zone. The other with tight end Zach Ertz extending the ball across the goal line there. All right. Let's break this down. Greg, first of all, you think the refs got both of these calls correct?
I do. I absolutely do. I think, number one, Zach Ertz, we shouldn't even be looking at this. That's clearly a catch. That's clearly a receiver turning into a runner.
Transition.
He died. That was, why are we even talking about this? I mean, even when I was listening to the game, I love Chris Collinsworth, but come on.
He was confused.
Are you kidding me,
Collinsworth
Chris?
was flat confused.
Yeah. I'm like, I love what he does. Chris, stop. You play receiver. He's caught the ball. He's now running. He dove. Nothing close to the Pittsburgh Patriots.
Cece, explain just real quick before we get to the more controversial one. Just Cece, explain to the audience, because we all agree on the Zach Ertz play, the difference between that and Jesse James.
Well, Ertz had control, and if the defensive back wouldn't have been there, he wouldn't have fallen. That's what the referee, he can bring into question, was the guy going to stay up or not? And Zach would have stayed up. There was contact there with McCourty, but he had 2 steps possession, something that's common to the game.
3.
He did all those things, and he began to lunge. So people want the rule at the goal line where a receiver is a running back and the ground can't cause a fumble. Well, when you have possession of it, he is a running back.
Right.
So if
that play was over before the ball ever came loose.
It was over because Ertz did the right things. Stay upright. If you go to the ground, all these things. Now, if he would have gone to the ground, then that right there, they would have negated it.
Right.
So try to stay on your feet as much as possible. It makes the rules a lot easier.
So we all agree on the Zach Ertz thing. He caught the ball, turned into a runner, then lunged. You said now let's talk about the other one, the Corey Clement one.
Corey Clement, it's a great catch. This is my issue with this catch rule. Now all of a sudden, if the ball has any subtle kind of movement,
here it is.
It's to be reviewed and incomplete potentially. Look, the ball can move, but it's about, do you maintain possession? That's the catch. Like, the ball can move, but
that's
do you
the Bertie Manuel rule from the playoffs, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the St. Louis Rams. The reason why they changed the rule because the ball hit the ground and moved. So then they altered the language in the rule because the rule hasn't changed. What they basically done is alter the language.
So when him going to the ground, now if the ball moves and he goes to the ground, because the ball moved before he ever even went to the ground, but he has to maintain possession while going to the ground and creating contact between him and the ground. The ball never moves once he hits the ground.
Well, this is the thing that when did he have possession? A lot of times because he caught the ball in his chest. All right, you're allowed to catch the ball and transfer the ball into your running arm. And that's what he did. People think that this is the Kelvin Benjamin play. It's not the Kelvin Benjamin play. He has possession now. 1, 2, 3 and a half.
Okay.
All right?
So here's the thing. I am not going to argue with either of these great wide receivers about the merits of what is and what is not a catch. But I can, on totally equal footing, argue with you guys on this one. All year long, that play has been called differently depending on who the officials are. All year long, that play has been either a catch or overturned to a non-catch because some referees, and I know Al Riveron's running the thing, so maybe he's got, depending on the day, when he readjusts it, because after what I would call the bobble, that foot doesn't get down. And all year long, with the games I've been watching, sometimes that's a touchdown because that left foot is out. So
this is where you're not on equal footing, okay? He didn't bobble the ball, all right?
He never bobbled the ball.
Okay.
He transferred the ball.
Okay, and so that what I'm telling you is that maybe I used the wrong terminology. Plays that look like that all year long have been called inconsistently in the replay
We've
office.
seen that play overturned, but I judge every play on itself. Everyone's trying to say, well, Ertz is Jesse James, and this is the No, they're not. Every play is a story in itself. He had possession in his chest. He transferred it into his running arm, so his last foot hitting the line has nothing to do with the catch.
Yeah, and for me, this is the reason why I become frustrated with things like this is because the league has done this to themselves. The league has clearly done this to themselves because they're making it difficult for referees to just make a play and stick with that. Now referees are depending upon the replay to confirm and call and judge out what is a catch and what is not a catch. So the refs really don't have any merit here. They just make a call and then they go to replay and then it gets overturned or it gets accepted as what we saw it was. But that's a catch.
And I also talked to Tony Romo. I did an event with Tony Romo on Sunday morning. And we talked about replay. And I told Tony how much we enjoy the game. Told him how much you enjoy his commentating.
I like Romo.
But he said we're gun shy as announcers. So Chris Collinsworth, he had it wrong. But as announcers, talking to an announcer, they're a little gun shy because of what you talked about, what's happening this season, how the refs have been inconsistent, so it affects how they call the game.
How much of this gets addressed in the offseason? Are we having the same conversation next
it
year?
seems like that is what, at its core, from hearing from Roger Goodell, name check my partner here. By the way, Commissioner Goodell, the first time about 6 months ago you name-checked my partner when he had a story on Ezekiel Elliott and said, Chris Carter, I didn't know he worked in the league office. Oh, but then right after the season, my man's called up to the league office to help out with some things. So I've just 2 times been name-checked. I'm just pointing that out. But more importantly, what the NFL wants, I think, is for that play that we saw from Corey Clement to consistently be called a catch. Because, by the way, I think that should be a catch. I want that to be a catch. My complaint was not that he didn't catch it. My complaint was
that it was called.
Throughout the year, it felt to me like when I was watching games, that's going to be overturned, because the foot touched. And I want to know while I'm watching. I knew the Zach Ertz thing was going to be a touchdown.
But the reason it's an issue is because we're looking at the referees that are on the field of play. They're not making that judgment call.
No,
so it's going back to the league office, and they're making the same call with all the same looking plays every single week. So this is an issue that they have to deal with. They have to become more consistent. This is not the referees who are on the field.
Roger Goodell's going to change the rule. He's going to change.
He has to.
Fans will be excited for the 2018 season. They're going to change.
You heard it here. First, second, third. Moving on, the 2018 Hall of Fame class was announced on Saturday. Randy Moss became the first wide receiver to become a first-ballot Hall of Famer since Jerry Rice. Here's Moss the moment he found out he was being enshrined in Canton.
Now that the NBA season is heating up, I wanted to talk about another podcast we do at Fox Sports, and that's Chris Broussard's In the Zone. Each week, Chris breaks down what's trending in the NBA and the biggest names in the league. Previous guests include Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Shaq, John Wall, and myself. So if you love the NBA, make sure to subscribe to In the Zone wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, on behalf of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, on behalf of your fellow Hall of Famers, on behalf of all of us who love the game, it's my privilege to welcome you to Canton, Ohio, which will be your new home for the rest of time. And Randy, I want to thank you for all you've done for the game, for all you're going to do for the game. Okay, Randy, and I want to thank you so much because this is going to be the beginning of your journey, not the end of your football career. We're going to put a gold jacket on you. We're going to give you a bronze bust. We're going to give you a ring of excellence. Okay, and the things you're going to do with that are incredible. You're going to change people's lives just like this is going to change your life.
Thank you, Miss Baker.
What'd you think about that, Cece?
That was pretty amazing. Ray Lewis and I were on the same floor. So one of my friends was able to be on the floor behind Dave Baker when they knocked on his door. It's an unbelievable experience. It does change your life. Randy Moss is not a crier, but you could see the appreciation for what football has done for him. And to me, being a person associated to him, I was rewarded too. Because all my hard work that I spent with that kid, trying to make him a better person, a better football player, man, I saw it. And not only was he a great football player, but I'm really satisfied with the man that Randy Moss has become. And at the end of the day, if you're not a good man, what else do you have? So I'm very, very excited to see Randy Moss join an exclusive class. And that would also put him and I in a very, very rare class with Jerry Rice and Terrell Owens, Jerry Rice and also Tim Brown, and John Stallworth and Lynn Swann. So now we are in a rare, rare area. Not only did you have a great career, but you had someone on the opposite side. People say wide receivers are very, very selfish. The chances of having two people being in the Hall of Fame as wide receivers, so Moss and I, we cherish that, and I'm very, very happy for him. It's great to see the video there. That's priceless.
Those people CC listed, the only list of teammates that are both in the Hall as wide receivers.
Yes.
So I want to applaud the Hall and those voters. It's a very select group. Around 50 people. It's somewhat secretive. They got this, I think, for the first time in a little bit of time. They got this exactly right.
This is a great class.
It's a great class. And Ray had to get in first ballot. He did. We both felt Randy needed to be in first ballot, but we were worried because there's only been one wide receiver in the last 30 years in first ballot.
Yes.
That's Jerry Rice, the greatest wide receiver of all time. T.O. needed to get in. Now, T.O. did some things the weekend of that probably explain one of the reasons people didn't want him to get in initially. T.O. is always going to be T.O. off the field. And, talk about that another time. But T.O. as a player absolutely has to be in. And then Urlacher, Dawkins, I tweeted, those three have to be in, and then Urlacher, Dawkins, Edge, and Steve Hutchinson. To me, those four guys are fighting for the last two spots. And Urlacher and Dawkins, there's no argument against. What'd you tell me about Brian Dawkins?
1 interception, 15 straight years.
And he was probably the hardest of this class to get in.
Yes.
But for Randy, I remember your Hall of Fame speech, and you mentioned the people who helped you along the way, and you said to them, a high school coach, best friends growing up, you guys are in the Hall of Fame as well. Well, you're already in the Hall of Fame, but part of you gets to go in a second time with Randy because of the things you guys did together and because of the work you guys did together. And so that's great, man. I'm happy for Randy. I don't know Randy. You do. You know what high regard I hold him in. I think it's amazing.
Yes, and also some of the other, Bobby Betherford, who built great teams as a general manager. Robert Brazile, amazing linebacker for the Houston Oilers, gets in on the senior committee. And Jerry Kramer, Bart Starr's center, he gets in. So not only the first-timers, Ray, Urlacher, Moss, but on the back end, these older guys, man, this class is dynamic from top to bottom.
Well, I learned so much about the Hall of Fame just from being on this set with you every day, and I had no idea that it was so hard for wide receivers to get in. For whatever reason, there's so many of them. Is there any possibility that this maybe changes that maybe we got over the hump with allowing wide receivers in, or is this just because they were so ridiculously gifted?
Well, Terrell Owens should have gotten in 2 years ago, so they held him out because they moved the finish line. Randy Moss, they couldn't deny him. Larry Fitzgerald and these other guys will be coming in the next 7 to 10 years. The bar is so high because if you look at T.O. and Randy, both 150 touchdowns, both over 1,000 catches.
Yeah.
No, it didn't get any easier just because they got in. It's going to always be very difficult for wide receivers to judge what is a Hall of Fame wide receiver based on inflated numbers.
I showed my son Randy Moss highlights for about a half hour this week because he was too young to watch him. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. What a fun athlete to watch. Happy for him and all those guys.
Finally, one of the more important defensive plays of the game, Brandon Graham managed to strip Tom Brady right here, and the Eagles recovered, allowing them to extend their lead from 5 to 8 while taking another minute off the clock. CeCe, how big of a play was this one?
This was the play of the Super Bowl. I mean, if you look at Tom Brady driving to win the game, Brandon Graham, they don't have any sacks at this point. If they don't get any sacks, they're not going to win. All right? I'm not – it's hard to take it back and be like, okay, hindsight. But if they don't get pressure on those last drives and if they don't sack Brady, they're not going to win the game. So let alone sacking, but they get the strip, the turnover, the momentum, which leads to 3 more points to be able to give them the margin of victory that they had. Man, this was a big play after not being successful. So the ability to stay positive and the ability to stay relentless, the way that front has done all season with 7 players playing 400 snaps, but they were negated in this game until this play.
Brandon Graham's the team captain. Brandon Graham led the team in sacks. It's very fitting Brandon Graham made the biggest play of the Eagles season. I do want to give credit, though, to the best player on the Eagles team, Fletcher Cox. If you watch this, everyone's single blocked except for who? Fletcher Cox. So the center can't help over on Brandon Graham.
So once you decide to double team Fletcher Cox, all the 3 other defensive linemen are one-on-one. It's easy math. They got 3 more guys left, and you got 3 guys to rush. So one of you other guys with the single block, you got to get home.
And by the way, you can see it in there. Fletcher Cox still moves the pocket somewhat right there.
Brady couldn't go to his left.
Couldn't go to his left. And so this is a great play by Brandon Graham. I do try as much as I can to give credit rather than find blame. And Brandon Graham deserves a ton of credit. But we have to be fair here, especially with how much deification we've done of Brady the last few weeks, and he's earned most of it. This is a bad play by Tom Brady with the Super Bowl on the line.
Why? Tell us.
You're down. Because you're down 5 points. It is not a situation where, I just can't take a sack. No, you're fine. You're in 2nd and short. There's plenty of time. You have a timeout. You're on the plus side of the 2-minute warning. The only thing you can't do there is turn the football over. That's the only thing you can't do there. And he did, and it wasn't because the right tackle or the left tackle got just swim moved. Right. He doesn't see him coming blindside, hit from the back. I don't know why I feel the need to act those things out, but it just happens sometimes. Brady, it was right in his face. This rush comes and he loses the football.
And you got to have ball security. We criticize Matt Ryan after last year's Super Bowl. All right? When they turned the ball over, they weren't able, we criticized him for that. In these critical situations, Tom Brady has been the best that we've seen.
Right.
But Brandon Graham's ability to get to the ball, but let's give some credit to the scheme. They moved him from defensive end to defensive tackle so that he can get a mismatch on Mason, the right offensive guard, who I believe is probably the weakest offensive lineman on New England's team. So from a scheme standpoint, they came up with a little trickeration to give them an edge late in the game.
All right, this was a head-scratcher from last night. Malcom Butler was the Super Bowl hero for the Patriots 3 years ago. Last night, he did not play a defensive snap. After the game, Butler quickly left the locker room, telling reporters, quote, "They gave up on me. It is what it is." For reference, Butler played in just under 98% of the defensive snaps this season. CeCe, the decision to bench Butler, did that cost the Patriots?
Absolutely. It cost them because you're going against a team that plays 3 receivers most of the time, a team that doesn't have a fullback that they use on a regular basis. So you need Malcom Butler because you need Rowe to be the nickel. And we know that at this point in the season, Stephon Gilmore, he's done a transformation on the other side from compared to the way he started the season, being very rough. So when you decide to bench Malcom Butler, just from an X's and O's standpoint, you put Rowe in the game, so he's got to play 70 snaps. Man, the Eagles went after him. I mean, he is not Malcom Butler as a player.
Jonathan Batamosi's getting defensive snaps.
Yeah, so what it does also is from a coverage standpoint, and Philadelphia was able to exploit this. It makes their safeties have to guard either Nelson Aguilar or someone else in the slot. And that's what you could see throughout the game.
Right.
Chung guarding Nelson Aguilar. Nelson Aguilar making big play after big play, conversion, moving the sticks. And that was a huge difference in the game. Now, Belichick's not going to explain it. New England, they keep all these things in-house. But when you decide to not play a guy who's played the most snaps, and this was more important, they dressed him.
That's
so
the key.
They wasted a roster spot in the biggest game of the year. And the thing that I don't know what happened, but I do know the effect. Him being benched affected these other guys and their ability to get a Super Bowl. So Belichick, whatever he had going on, it affected Tom Brady and the rest of that roster because that was not the best New England team that could have been on the field.
Man, the offense did its job.
Yes.
Period, point blank. The offense, you go there, score 33 points in the Super Bowl despite a missed extra point, despite a missed field goal. The defense could not get off the field. Philadelphia, 10 of 16 on third down, 2 of 2 on fourth down, so essentially 12 of 16 in chances to get off the field. And the fact that he dressed is a key component of this. You have 53-man roster. You can dress 46 on game day.
Yes.
So there's 7 guys that are not going to count for your game day allotment. If this were that Belichick was insistent after the game that it was not disciplinary, meaning he didn't miss curfew. He didn't get arrested and we didn't know about it. If it were disciplinary and you're benching him, you don't dress him. The fact that he dressed tells me I believe Belichick. It wasn't disciplinary. But this guy played every single defensive snap of both playoff games leading up to this.
Right. Now, this is not the first time he's been benched this year. In the preseason, he got benched. He got off to a slow start. Belichick said he wasn't pleased with his overall performance. But this is one of the things about Bill Belichick. It's all nice when you win it. But I'm going to tell you, he's very, very dismissive to players. And it came back to haunt him, because it affected their ability to be able to play defense. And when you have a safety guarding a wide receiver, that is not his strong suit. You saw Chung during the game. There was a couple times he had to be helped off the field. And because Belichick decides to keep Butler on the sideline, it affects the rest of the team.
You can't swallow your pride when you see that your defense actually does need him. Not when you're playing okay and you know you don't and you want to make a point.
No, because he thinks that no one is bigger than the team. But in this case, the team as a whole suffered because of the decision that you made. Now, all practice, they went through the same lineup. Malcom Butler was in all the practices. Now, even if they were going to start Rowe, they didn't tell him until after the national anthem. So how are you going to tell someone one of your frontline players is not in the game and it's not going to have an effect? You got a guy that's in his 3rd Super Bowl in 4 years. He's crying on the sideline as they get ready to prepare to start the game.
And I know people probably know this, but just a reminder, yes, if you're thinking, was that him? He is the guy that picked off Russell Wilson. Yeah. He is the guy that made...
He did win you a Super Bowl.
He did win you a Super Bowl.
One of the 5 that you've won, he won it.
And, by the way, that was the Super Bowl that changed everything. Because had they lost that Super Bowl, the narrative surrounding Brady and Belichick would have been, haven't won a Super Bowl since 2004, had lost 3 in a row. The whole thing, everything is different if Malcom Butler doesn't make that A-plus play. Talked about this before the show. Just knocking the ball down against Seattle would have been an A-level play.
Yes.
And then Seattle would have had a 3rd and goal from the 1, and they probably run it there. The fact that he made one of the greatest plays ever to win you a Super Bowl, which leads me to believe, Jenna, you were asking before the show and during the breaks, like, why would this happen? And I couldn't come up with an answer. Like, we don't know because Belichick's a little mercurial. But one thing that occurred to me that might sound crazy is if Belichick thinks he can win without you, man, it's a great, hey.
It's a great negotiating ploy. And
a message to send to anyone, negotiating not just with him, but with anybody else on the team. Hey, guess what? You remember that guy that won us a Super Bowl? Who's one of our, even though he's had a bad year, he admitted he had a bad year, one of our more talented defensive backs in a contract year.
Watch what I do to him.
Watch what I do to him. Think what I'll do to you. Like you said, it's all fine and good if Nick Foles throws 3 picks and you win this game 38-13. It's not so good when you allow Nick Foles to throw for near 400 yards.
And it bears repeating again. He played every snap of the first 2 playoff games for the Patriots and almost 98% of their defensive snaps all season long.
How much of a difference, Jenna? What's the difference between 6-2 with your Super Bowl record and 5-3?
Good point. I'm Jenna Wolf, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.